All right, and what is up, guys, and welcome to another edition of the Fight Forecast. I know it's been a couple weeks, but me and my partner Dave, we do things a little bit differently now when it comes to the podcasts and stuff like that. Primarily, the Fight Forecast will just be for bets and stuff of that nature. But Dave couldn't make it this week to the podcast, so I decided to throw out some a little bit quickly, breaking down some of the fights from a DraftKings perspective for you guys, our subscribers on Daily Fantasy Insider, as well as the people that are not subscribers right now that are looking for some of the top content out there. Definitely hit up the website, hit up me and Dave on Twitter. My Twitter handle's right there on the screen at RSCMMA89. And this information definitely will help you guys get into the green for sure. So I'm just going to break down each fight a little bit here, go over each fight quickly, and hopefully we get into the money here. So the first fight we got Taeger, Yulin Beckoff versus Bruno Silva. This is it's a pretty big price tag for Taeger being his first fight in the UFC. And then on top of that, being the first fight on the card, that's always a little bit leery to me personally. Anytime that you step into the octagon for the first time, you tend to not always put on the best performance that you can. And that doesn't always happen. I mean, we've seen, some people go in there their first time and just absolutely demolish. But the fact that it's his first fight of the card, that does worry me a little bit. Now, Silva, honestly, he really doesn't have much of a chance in this fight, in my opinion. Silva, he only lands 2.32 strikes per minute. He absorbs 3.75, so he absorbs a good amount of strikes per minute. He does land a good amount of takedowns. That is the main thing that he goes for, is the takedown. He lands 2.68 takedowns per fight. And he has a 100% takedown defense. So I don't see Silva getting taken down very often in this fight, if at all. I lean Taeger, but at the same time, I think he's more so a GPP play. Just due to the fact, like I said, first fight, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of what I lean here, is Taeger. I don't know if he gets the finish at 9,300. He kind of has to get the finish in order to make his price worth it. But on this card, yeah, 93, you want to have him in a couple of your lineups at least. So the next fight that we got here, we got Tracy Cortez versus Stephanie Egger. Now, Cortez, in my opinion, this is her fight to lose. I know Dave is pretty high on Egger when it comes to at least cash games. Thinks it'll be a lot closer fight than the prices on DraftKings show. Cortez is 9,000, Egger is only 7,200. So there's a big discrepancy there price-wise. Cortez lands 4.83 strikes per minute. She also lands 3 takedowns per fight and has 100% takedown defense. I think that Egger is going to try to get the takedown. I don't think necessarily that she'll be able to land it, but if you do watch a lot of her tapes, that's generally what she does go for early and often, is the takedown. And once she got her opponent down, she was easily able to finish it via ground and pound. However, most of the fights that I did see were her in a boxing ring instead of an octagon. I feel that it's a lot harder for the opponent to get up from the ground in a boxing ring than it is an octagon due to the fact that they have nothing to push up against. So, whether her ground game is really as good as you see on tape, that's kind of questionable in my opinion. Well, I do think that, Edgar isn't the worst playing cash games. I do have her in my cash lineup right now. I do think that this more than likely is Cortez's fight to lose, and that she'll win it in a decision victory. I don't see either of these fighters getting the finish, but I think that Cortez will be able to do enough and stop the takedown. And, if the takedown gets stopped by Cortez, Edgar really hasn't shown a whole lot on the feet when it comes to tape that I've watched. So Cortez, GPP play. Probably wouldn't put her in cash. Just the value personally, I don't think is there. Edgar, cash. Probably wouldn't put her in GPP. So the next fight we got here, I think honestly it's going to be one of the more entertaining fights of the card. However, it's going to be one of the lower scoring fights of the card. We got Gigi Chicaze versus Omar Moraes. Now, both of these guys are absolute strikers. They're both guys that like to strike. Gigi lands 3.31 strikes per minute. Moraes lands 3.85 strikes per minute. Both fighters absorb less than 3.5 strikes per minute. So both of these guys, their game plan is kind of the same. They like to strike. They like to use kicks, punches, and mix it up. But if you look at their DraftKings history, they just generally don't score a whole lot. And I think for the type of fight that this is going to be, where they both kind of mirror each other, in my opinion, I think that it is going to be a pretty low-scoring fight where, the winner maybe gets 70, 80 tops. I do lean Moraes. I think that he has the ability to land a couple takedowns this fight. Gigi only has a 65% takedown defense. So I think that Moraes could land maybe one or two takedowns during the fight, which will help him in scoring on DraftKings as well as getting the decision victory. So I do lean Moraes. I think he's more so a cash play than a GPP play. I don't really think that either of these fighters are much of a GPP play personally. But I do like Moraes at 8,300 in cash. I think that, even if he only gets you, say, 70 or 80 points, that's still close to 10x, which for cash is more than respectable. So, I think that he's a pretty good play. Gigi, I mean, if you want to use him in cash instead of Moraes, okay. Personally, I don't really like it just due to the fact that he doesn't have the takedown ability as much. And he gets taken down, like I said, 65% takedown defense. So more than likely he will get taken down at least once. So I personally don't really like him for cash or GPP. If anything, maybe if you're multi-entering a GPP. But outside of that, I probably would fade him for the most part. I do like actually one bet on that fight though, and I'm not sure if the odds have changed because I looked at these odds when earlier in the week. But fight goes to the distance. When I looked at it, it was -200, which is a fair amount of juice. But I honestly don't see how this fight doesn't go to the distance. So yeah, that's definitely one that you may want to throw into a parlay as like a low odds fight in the parlay, or even just straight bet it, in my opinion. So the next fight we got here, we got Eli Quenzia versus Tony Kelly. Now, we do have Tony Kelly as the edge play on Daily Fantasy this week. Yes, Tony Kelly does have a chance to score good. He has shown the ability in the past to be able to finish fights. I put him as the edge play because I think that he will be low owned. I think that he'll be able to score enough points off of strikes that he can get a good decision victory at worst. But honestly, I don't think that this is going to be that great of a fight. Just for some feeling that I get, Ally he just doesn't strike much. He lands as well as absorbs under 3 strikes per minute. Now, Kelly, on the other hand, he absolutely brawls. He lands as well as eats 7.6 strikes per minute. So this guy likes to strike. Initially when I looked at this fight, that just was my feeling that this was going to be not that great of a fight. I do think that Kelly is the one to go with in this fight. I think his striking ability is a lot higher than Ali's. Kelly landed 120 significant strikes in his last loss, in a decision loss in his last fight. So if he does that and he gets the decision victory, right there, that's 75, 80 points. And that's without anything else happening. Kelly has shown the ability to get the finish in the past. He's won 4 out of his 5 wins have been via the finish. So he definitely does have the ability to get the finish. That is why we went with him as our edge play. And I think that if you're going to target someone in this fight, it definitely should be him. I would stick to him in GPP personally. I wouldn't put him in cash myself. But the argument could be made to put him into a cash lineup as well. So the next fight we got Impa Kassagni versus Yokan Buckley. Now, me and Dave differ from this fight a good amount. I personally think that this is Impa's fight to lose. I think he's just the much more well-rounded fighter. I think that, he just everywhere is the better fighter, honestly. Now, Dave does like Buckley to win this fight. I personally just don't see it. Impa lands 5.58 strikes per minute to Buckley's 3.80. Impa only absorbs 3.42 strikes per minute to Buckley's 7.50. Impa lands 1.67 takedowns per fight. Everything just points to Impa winning this fight, personally, in my opinion. I honestly, I don't think that Buckley is that good of a fighter, personally. He got pieced up pretty badly against Kevin Holland, which, it isn't anything to sneeze at. Kevin Holland is a great UFC fighter. But end of the day, I just don't think Buckley has a chance in this fight, personally. I think for the price tag of $8,900, you can put Impa in cash or GPP. I think that he's a guy that you'll want in your GPP lineup, honestly, because I think that he has the chance to finish the fight, and even if he doesn't finish the fight, I would not at all be surprised if he scores 100 points in a decision victory. So I personally, I will probably be fairly heavy on him out of the 20 lineups that I make. Buckley, if you're multi-lineuping, have him in a few, because he has shown in the past the ability to win the fight via knockout. So he does have that knockout power, but he's one of those fighters that if he does not knock you out, in my opinion, he's not going to score well at all. So you're kind of hoping for knockout or bust if you pick Buckley, in my opinion. So the next fight we got here, we got Rodrigo Ferreira versus Chris Dukakis. Now, I was very, very low on Dukakis in his last fight. Most of the people know the Dukakis name from his brother, Kyle, who is a very well-known prospect in the UFC. Personally, I'm still low on Chris. I just think, he showed a lot in his first fight, but he was going against a nobody, honestly. This fight, he's going against a guy that's a lot different type of fighter when it comes to heavyweight. I think that this is a fight that you will want in your lineup one way or the other if you're playing GPP. I think this is one that absolutely will finish one way or the other, but I think it's Rodrigo's fight to lose. Rodrigo lands 4.44 strikes per minute, absorbed 3.38. He also lands almost 3 takedowns per fight, which is an insane amount for a guy of his size. I think that he will be able to get the takedown fairly easily in this fight against Dukakis. Honestly, Dukakis does not have the best shape in the world, so I think that he will be able to land that takedown. From there, more than likely, I think that he gets the submission victory. But if the fight for some reason does not go to the ground, I think that Ferreira still is the better fighter, even on the feet. I think that he'll be able to piece up Dukakis and knock him out eventually, more than likely in the second or third round. Dukakis's body shape just is not meant to go long into fights. So I think if he gets into the second, third round, he's going to be completely gassed, and that Ferreira is just going to have his way with him. Dukakis has to win this fight in the first round, early second, or he's not going to win, in my opinion. Both of these fighters, I would say, are probably GPP. Not necessarily cash, just due to the fact that, both have knockout power and anything can happen in the heavyweight division. So I wouldn't really go cash with either of these fighters. But for GPP, this is a fight that you absolutely, one way or the other, want in your lineup, in my opinion. All right. So next we got Tom Breeze versus Kb Mueller. So this is a fight that Breeze is going to want to get inside Mueller's defense. So from almost all the tape that I watched, what I saw was if Mueller can keep the fight on the outside, keep it at distance, he has very good striking ability. But the second that the fight gets close and his opponent gets inside of his defense, Mueller just does not have good striking defense at all if the fight gets in close, and he gets rocked time and time again. Breeze lands 3.55 strikes per minute. Both fighters are absolute finishers. 17 out of their 21 combined fights have been finished. So, this is another fight that I think that you may want on a GPP lineup one way or the other. I personally, I think that this is a Breeze fight pretty easily. I think that he'll be able to close that distance, like I said earlier, and rock KB. Now, if you're multi-lineuping, I'd probably have a couple KB in there just due to the fact that he has shown that knockout ability before if he can keep the fight at the distance. So I do think that this fight is a little closer than the numbers show, personally. but I do think that Breeze is the guy that you want to go with out of the two, and only play KB if you're multi-lineup. Once again, probably wouldn't touch either of these fighters in cash. It's just too volatile of a fight, with both of them having finishing capability. So I would not go with either of these fighters in cash personally, but GPP, you want this fight in your lineup, just like the last fight. So next fight we got Yusuf Salal versus Eli Tapora. Now, I know me and Dave, this is another fight that we differentiate on a pretty good amount. I personally am a big fan of Salal. I think that he is a great up-and-coming fighter. I think that this is his fight to lose, personally. He lands 3.2 strikes per minute. He only absorbs 1.4 strikes per minute. He also lands 3 takedowns per fight. He, just in my opinion, he is better everywhere outside of submission. So I think that Zalal wants to keep this fight on the feet. Not to say that he shouldn't go for any takedowns at all, but if Tapora is to win this fight, it's going to be by submission. That's how he's won most of his fights. So I think that Zalal is the much better striker. That's where he should keep the fight, is on the feet. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for maybe 1 or 2 takedowns throughout the fight, but then tries to get right back up just to basically get the points type of thing. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but Tapora is not a guy that you want to stay on the ground with for too long. So I think that this is Zalal easily, honestly, as long as he keeps it on the feet. I think that Zalal you could use for GPP or cash. Don't necessarily think that he's going to get the finish per se, even though I think he is the much better striker. I just think that he isn't much of a finisher, honestly. So for 8,600, you're looking for a couple takedowns, 100 significant strikes, and a victory. If that happens, you're looking at about 90 points, which isn't too bad. And I think that's doable, honestly. So yeah, I think that cash or GPP Salal is a good play. Tapora, if you're multi-entering GPP, may not be bad to put him in 1 or 2, just in case, where he does have that submission capability, and Salal does like to get the fight to the ground a lot. And well, I hope that's not what he does this fight. That is what he tends to do. So if that does happen, Tapora does have a chance. But I would only play him if you're multi-lineuping. So the next fight we got here, if you're part of the War Room, you know that one of these two guys is our must-have of the week. This fight has Aspinall written all over it. He's just a much bigger fighter. Alan Budat normally fights at light heavyweight. He's fighting at heavyweight this fight, which is what Aspinall is used to. So Aspinall is going to be the much bigger, stronger fighter, which is going to wear down Budat, in my opinion. On the feet, Budat is very, very wild. He's kind of all over the place. So I think that Aspinall, honestly, will finish him via knockout, probably in the first or second round. Yeah, I think that is his path to victory. My only worry is that he doesn't score enough, honestly. But, if he gets the first round victory, because he's not a huge, significant strike kind of guy. He's more so, the power guy. So That does worry me a little bit, but I think on this slate, you have to take a stand on one of the higher priced guys. This is a slate that isn't the greatest when it comes to DFS, in my opinion. So that's who we are taking the stand with, is Aspinall. I know, yes, he is the highest priced fighter on the card, so he should, in theory, do the best. But we just feel like this is the biggest mismatch on the card, and that Aspinall has a clear path to victory. So yeah, Aspinall, having cash, having GPP, just have him in your lineup. Budat, I'd fade completely, which, I mean, you can understand for his price tag why that would happen anyways. But even if he was a little bit higher, just the size difference is going to be way too much in this fight. So the next fight we got here, we got Marcus Perez versus Strikis Plessis. Marcus, he is a hit or miss fighter, honestly. Sometimes he does great, sometimes he does horrible. Dukakis is making his UFC debut, which, to see the guy going against someone who's been in the UFC for a bit now, being the higher priced fighter, that is a something to look at. Personally, I think that this fight has fade written all over it for the most part. Perez just doesn't do much for me. He's very hit or miss when it comes to DFS. He either scores a crap ton, which has happened in a couple fights, or he scores really low. He lands 2.75 strikes per minute. He absorbs almost 4 strikes per minute, which that's never good for a guy that's been in the UFC as long as he is. Now, he does land 1 takedown per fight, but that's not really much, honestly. Chicaze didn't really show me too much when I watched tape on him, which is why I'm not all over him going against Perez. He didn't really wow me at all. I think if you do go for someone in this fight, I'd probably go Chicaze if you're going GPP. But honestly, this is a fight that I would not be against completely fading. I don't think that it would be a very high scoring fight, personally. All right, so next we got Ben Rothwell versus Marcin Tabora. This is another fight that I think you may want in most of your GPP lineups. Both fighters in the past have shown knockout ability. On top of that, Tabora has had a very questionable chin as of lately. So, that definitely is a plus when it comes to Rothwell. I don't know if Rothwell has the power anymore to be able to finish the fight, but definitely it's a possibility. Rothwell eats 4.44 strikes per minute. Both fighters land about 3.3. Tabora eats only 2.83 strikes per minute, so he definitely does absorb less strikes, but when they hit, they seem to hit clean. Tabora does land 1.69 takedowns per fight, and Rothwell only has a 69% takedown defense. So I think that Tabora will have the chance to take the fight down to the ground at some point in time, which is more than likely, honestly, what he should do, personally, in my opinion, is try to get the fight to the ground at least a couple times this fight. I lean Tabora slightly in this fight, and I say very slightly. I think with the capability to get the takedown, that that is why I lean him. Now, like I said before, he does have a very questionable chin. 4 out of his last 6 losses have been via knockout. So that is always a little bit of a worry when it comes to taking a guy like that. But I think that I lean him a little bit. Once again, only GPP. Anytime that, we say that a fight is a fight that you want on your lineup one way or the other, that is strictly GPP. Don't put them into your cash lineup, just simply for the fact that either of these fighters could score 100 points and either of these fighters could score 0 points. That's just the type of this fight that this is. This is a fight that you want in your GPP lineup one way or the other. Especially if you're multiing, sprinkle this in most of your lineups. It'll be hit or miss, but if it does hit, then you're looking pretty. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling here. Is I lean Tabora a little bit more, but I'll have both in some of my lineups. So now we got the co-main event of the evening. We got Makwan Amarkana versus Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza, 8,800. Markwin, 7,400. Normally, I do have a fair amount of the co-main event as well as the main event in my lineups. I don't think that this is one that I'm going to have much of, honestly. Barboza, I don't think that he's worth his price, personally, of 8,800 for GPP. For cash, I don't hate it. Don't love it, but don't hate it either. But for GPP, he doesn't finish much anymore from what I can see here. He lands as well as absorbs 4+ strikes per minute, which is always a worry. Now, Markwin doesn't land many strikes at all. He lands 1.55 strikes per minute. He's the type of fighter that's going to go for the takedown early and often. He lands 3.45 strikes per minute. Now, the good news with Barboza is he has an 80% takedown defense. So I don't think that Markwin is going to be able to get the takedown very often like he normally does. But Markwin just doesn't get hit enough to really get me excited about Barboza personally. I think that Barboza for cash, you can make the argument that he'd be able to get about 80 points, so around 10x. But for GPP, I'm just not really feeling him personally, unless you're multi-entering. Markwin, I'd probably say, if you want to put him in your cash lineup, okay. But I think there's better options around that price point. Just in case he can land the takedown. We've seen crazier things happen. But I'd probably put him as a multi-entry, a GPP type play, or a fade, personally. Either the or. All right, so now for the main event of the evening. We got Marlon Moraes versus Corey Sandhagen. Now, this is a very, very interesting fight to me because Sandhagen just lost his last fight, which was a number one contender fight pretty much against Aljamain Sterling. If you look at Aljamain Sterling's record, his last loss was to Marlon Moraes. Now, that's not to say that Moraes automatically is going to win because we know MMA math just doesn't work like that. Honestly, I like Sandhagen in this fight. The main concern with Sandhagen going into the Sterling fight was his takedown defense. Sandhagen has, I believe, a 33% takedown defense, so he is not good at stopping the takedown at all. And that is one of the things that Sterling goes for early and often is the takedown. So that fight, honestly, was not a good fight for Sandhagen, and it got shown that way. I think that this fight is a better matchup for Sandhagen. And I just think that he's going to be able to rebound and win this fight personally. He lands almost 7 strikes per minute. He absorbs around 4 strikes per minute. Moraes lands and absorbs around 3.5 strikes per minute. So, those numbers are pretty close when it comes to the amount of strikes that get absorbed. And Sandhagen does land about 1.2 takedowns per fight. Now, neither of these fighters have great takedown defense. I already mentioned Sandhagen's. Moraes has, I believe, like a 65% takedown defense, so his isn't much better either. But honestly, I think that this fight stays on the feet for the most part. Maybe Sandhagen gets 1 or 2 takedowns throughout the fight, depending on how long it goes. But I believe that Sandhagen more than likely will finish the fight in probably either the second or third round. So I personally like Sandhagen more in this fight. I think you can put either of these fighters in a GPP lineup or in a cash lineup. Right at that 8,000, 8,200 mark, that's a great price point for either of these fighters. So, you can do either in GPP, honestly. In cash, this is actually a fight that I would consider stacking. Once again, I would never say that in GPP unless you're multi-entering, probably 20 plus. But in cash, this is definitely a fight that I would consider stacking. And, that way you can build the rest of your lineup with some of those higher priced fighters and get a good chance at a good score. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion for this fight is that, GPP for either of them, cash for either of them. This is just a fight that you want to put in your lineup one way or the other. But unlike, most of the other fights that we mentioned, one way or the other, this is one that you can go ahead and stack, especially with it being a 5-round fight. I doubt it goes that long, but at the chance that it does go that long, it will help out your cash lineups. So yeah, man, that is the breakdowns for the fight. Sorry, I am getting this out a little bit late, and it's just me. We weren't able to do it last night. Dave had to study for some tests, and then his wife dragged him out someplace today, so he wasn't able to do it today. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the DFI War Room or hit me up on Twitter, and I can answer any questions that you may have. And yeah, let's just make this money, guys. Moving forward, we hope to maybe do like a live podcast to answer your guys' questions and stuff like that. We were gonna test it out today, but it didn't work. But moving forward, we're hoping to try something like that out. So yeah, let's get this money, guys. Ask any questions, and the slate closes at 5. So check this podcast out.